The Dallas Cowboys were on the practice field this weekend looking at all of their new draft picks. We've got nuggets, notes, and news coming out of minicamp next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, yes, we've got nuggets, notes, and news coming out of Dallas Cowboys rookie minicamp. Landon, let's start with the biggest. Yeah. Literally the biggest. The offensive line. We saw Tyler Guyton playing at left tackle. We saw Cooper Beebe playing at center. And then we saw Earl Bostic, a really interesting undrafted free agent signing from last year, playing right tackle. So what immediately stood out to you?
They didn't have enough players to facilitate a practice on the offensive line. I think what immediately stood out to me is not only that obviously Beebe is getting work at center, obviously Guyton getting work at left tackle, but the fact that they were basically instructed, from the get-go, and it sounds like Solari told Beebe over the phone after the draft, after he got drafted, to go ahead and start working at center. It kind of putting a lot of the speculation.
They're not messing around.
They're not messing around. Yeah, and it's interesting because McCarthy even talked about it. McCarthy also had a press conference after all this as well, and somebody asked him about versatility and offensive linemen, and he said, yes, of course, that's a really important part of what we do. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, with the limitations that are put on the practice, the number of practices, and the CBA, and that sort of thing, they don't really have time right now for a guy that they project to be a starter to kind of messing around with cross training. They need to get him ready for the position that he's going to be playing, likely, week one. So
that was my takeaway. Is it seems like they're fast tracking Cooper Beebe to be the starting center in week one, with the fallback option of, if he's not ready, Brock Hoffman is your week one center.
Yeah, and TJ Bass was the guy that they also mentioned as well as a guy who's taking snaps as well as kind of learning that center spot. So, I think that I think that it's a solid plan to kind of come up with a starter and backup combo out of those three players, right? Like out of those three, you should be able to cobble together a starter and then a backup situation. So, I think that it's nice to not have to speculate on that. It's nice to not have to wait until training camp to kind of get an idea of exactly if this is going to be a situation where you're having to try a bunch of different pieces, and maybe they will still do that a little bit, but it does seem that they've made a pretty solid commitment to, hey, it's what you guys think. It's Guyton at left tackle, it's Beebe at center. Let's roll.
I like that they're just not messing around here. Yeah, right? Like we've seen before. Okay, you're gonna play some guard, you're gonna play some center. Like Cooper Beebe just hasn't had a ton of center reps. Let's give him as many as possible this offseason. Like we know that's probably where he's going to play. There's just not a starting guard job opening right now with Tyler Smith at left guard and Zach Martin obviously at right guard. So let's get him going. I thought that was really interesting. By the way, just a real quick note. Doesn't it feel like they would like TJ Bass to be like the swing interior guy and then Brock Hoffman to be the backup center who's probably inactive, where he's probably the starter, like if Cooper Beebe is ruled out for a week, but it's TJ Bass who's coming in to finish out a game active.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's this classic situation where you have one guy who's your long-term backup, right? And then you have your game day backup, right? The guy that is the in-game replacement. I think TJ Bass makes a lot of sense as that guy because he can play guard and you think that if you really needed him to, I bet he could even play tackle. So he's a guy that potentially you could take into the game and could, worst comes to worst, be a 5-position backup, which would be really incredible. But yes, at the very least, likely to be the swing interior backup for the Cowboys.
All right, we're going to talk more about what goes on in these mini camps and really what the goal is here. But there's no live competing. There's no one-on-one drills. You're in shirts and shorts, and sometimes you have helmets on. Most of the time, you don't. Is there anything that we can gain from the offensive line, which is really the most physical part of practices, anyways, which you don't get at minicamp at all? Is there anything we can gain from these minicamps when it comes to the offensive line?
Not so much, honestly. I mean, because really, like you mentioned, it's a lot of kind of just getting ready to practice. So I think what you see is how do they look? Like, how do they physically look? A lot of times for guys that are
that's it for me. That's the physical. Like
yeah,
you can see in pictures sometimes, like,
yep.
Oh, this guy is really lean, or this guy needs to add lower body weight, or man, this guy is a lot more muscular than I thought. Like, to me, honestly, that's kind of the stuff you could take away from mini camps once you get everybody on the same field together.
Yeah, and honestly, he's not an offensive lineman, but I noticed that, for instance, the corner that the Cowboys drafted,
Carson.
is his name?
Yeah, Kalen Carson. Yep.
Kalen Carson, like, he has an interesting body. He's kind of that leaner, but he's got like good muscle structure up top. He's got a nice body for a defensive back. I really like his kind of style physically. Who
looks a little bit like Al Harris physically, like long.
Yeah, he does
arms.
physically look like Al Harris. You're right, absolutely, and maybe that's why Al was pushing for him to get drafted. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really the main thing that the takeaway is kind of hearing these guys talk a little bit, hearing these guys talk, about what they were told their role would potentially be, hearing these coaches kind of talk about their first impressions with these kids. Getting a look at them physically. Like, I can't express that enough. I know that seems like a small, stupid thing, but it isn't. Like, you kind of have to get a physical, scan of these guys, especially when you go into training camp and you're trying to chase guys down with your eyes, right? You kind of just have to get an idea of what they look like and what they move like. And then it really does help you later when you're trying to watch them in training camp and it's in kind of a mass of bodies and it's hard to see them sometimes. So, those are really the big takeaways. And for the players themselves, like, they have their own things that they're trying to work on that are more about, just how things are done in practice. And it's not so much a competitive situation, though everything is a competition.
Of course.
It's more of just this is truly instructional for these guys.
Yes. This is day one. We're going to talk about practice in the next segment, because honestly, that's the most important thing coming out of minicamp. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Lena, let's talk about minicamp kind of as a whole. So what's the main goal here for the Cowboys when it comes to these rookie practices?
Well, I think the first thing we got to mention is that rookie mini camps are very different than mini camps, right? And OTAs in general, right? Because the rookie mini camp, and this is, it's not very sexy and it's not very fun to talk about, but the truth of the matter is the rookie mini camp is literally just teaching these guys how to practice. It's practicing practice, right?
Yes.
It's like, hey, this is what happens when we ring the horn the first time. Everybody sprints to their individual drills. You go find your individual coach, and then you start doing this. Hey, this is what happens when we ring the bell the second time. We're running to team drills. It's about learning the schedule of a Dallas Cowboys practice. It's about learning the techniques that are used in the individual drills as they move from practice to practice. It is literally studying to know how to practice. And it goes back to the CBA, right? It goes back to the idea that these guys are on very, very, very tight schedules. The CBA really limits the amount of practice time that's available to these guys, the amount of time that the coaches and the players have on the field and in the classroom together. So in order to kind of squeeze the juice out of this, in order to optimize these moments, you have to have like a pre-practice practice with these rookies so they don't just completely screw up your mini camps and OTAs with your veteran players because they don't know what to do. They hear the horn and then they don't know where to go, or they don't know how to operate this drill. So now suddenly the coach has got to stop everything and teach these guys how to do this.
Yep.
This gives them their own opportunity to learn how to do these drills properly, to ask the questions that they need, not in front of the veterans, because I know that can be, I think about how awkward it is, right? To the interaction between rookies and veterans, especially when you hear some of these guys talk like, I grew up watching Dak Prescott. It's like you just wonder. I saw Kalen Carson talking, and he was talking about how someone asked him if he had met Trayvon Diggs. He's like, nah, I saw him over there, but I didn't want to like go up to him and be like a fanboy. And it's like, it's all of that, right? You want to be able to learn in kind of a safer, situation where you're not embarrassed that you're screwing it up in front of the vets. All of that is really important. So I think that that's really what the mini camps are about. It's just about, hey, what are we doing in practice? Like literally, what are we doing? What are the techniques that are used in this specific drill that I have to do? It's all just a way to kind of make sure that when the vets show up, things are running smoothly and you're not, stumbling over practice. Stuff. Yeah, exactly. Disrupting practice because you have to drag a rookie across the field to show him where he's supposed to be going. They should know all that stuff. They should already know their playbooks. And then by the time the vets come in, hopefully it's just a seamless process of, hey, this is a practice. There's no rookie falling over their feet trying to figure out what to do.
It reminds me of a lot of like middle school orientation, like that night before the start of the year. Like, hey, this is where your locker's at. This is how you open your locker. This is where your homeroom is at. So that way, when the bell rings, it's not just mass chaos everywhere, right? Like that's basically what this is. It's orientation to the NFL. Now, the NFL has really scaled back what they can do in these practice. I mean, I remember like during the Bill Parcells era, you would have like. You'd have one-on-one drills and you would have team drills. And I mean, they're just not doing any of that anymore. Especially it was a couple years ago, Mike McCarthy got fined for too much competitiveness.
He lost 50 grand or whatever it was.
Yeah. So he's not making that mistake again. So this is really about just learning how to line up, learning where to go, learning what to do. And then I think what OTA start next week, I believe, or maybe I think they have a camp today, correct?
Yeah, they're practicing today a little bit. Yeah, so this is their first day with the vets and the rookies together.
That's when we'll see a little bit more of actual on football, football related stuff that kind of translate to what we see on Sunday. But for this, what happened over the weekend, it's mostly just showing you how to practice,
learning about the kids and them learning about the Cowboys, right? That's what this is. We learned a little bit more about these rookies as they've come in. They'll give interviews. You hear the coaches get their first impressions, and then they learn a little bit about what it is to be a Cowboy day to day. What does practice look like? What are these drills? What's this drill? What's that drill? And then, hopefully by the time the vets come in today, they won't be so nervous and everything will just kind of run smoothly.
I did hear a quote from Mike McCarthy talking about how, this was a really good group and they were really experienced. And I think that's just kind of the evolution of like college football too. Like
Yep.
it used to be some of these rookies would be really green and wide eyed when they come into mini camps, but
Or coming into these camps to get into shape, because
yeah, it's
they
not
had
the
just
case
basically
anymore.
stopped training after the combine stuff. So
Right. So that's not really the case anymore, which I think that's just the maturation of the NFL and the college prospects and all that kind of stuff. But there were some interesting notes and nuggets that came out of some of the pressers, that came out of some of the little things that happened at camp. We will discuss those next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. The NBA playoffs have been absolutely fantastic. That T-Wolves Nuggets series, neither team has won at home yet. So we're going to a game 5 in Denver. That should be a lot of fun. But also go check out some of the NFL lines over at FanDuel. You can go look at win totals, futures bets. We've got the NFL schedule that's coming out later this week. So that means you're going to be able to start betting on the actual NFL games and the early lines. Absolutely crazy. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make every single playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We're going to be discussing some more news and notes and rumblings coming out of camp. Let's first start with this one. Mike McCarthy said the Cowboys are going to be using a running back by committee, which it's not really news if you've been listening to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, but he did say it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to get that kind of confirmed a little bit. I think it's a tough. Sometimes we get caught up on the answers that these coaches give, and I think sometimes it's tough, to kind of answer the question truthfully and not, kind of speak as candidly as you want about the player, and I think when McCarthy's talking about Zeke, he has such great respect for Zeke, and he's trying to tell us, hey, this is a running back by committee situation. He's in one way he's like, Zeke hasn't lost his step. You go talk to these coaches, he's the strength coaches, and that part's for Zeke, right? Like that what he's saying, like that's Mike McCarthy speaking directly to Zeke, saying, "Hey, I still got full confidence in you. I believe in you." No. And then the hedging is, well, it wouldn't be fair to give him the same touches as he had before, or we're a running back by committee, and that's his way of saying, hey, like, yeah, Zeke is going to get touches, but this is not a situation where he's the featured back or the main back and part of committee. I think he even said, like, just listen to the way he phrased it. Like he said, it wouldn't be fair to Zeke is what he said, right? Like this is psychological spin in order to kind of make sure that make sure that Zeke hears that answer and is comfortable with it. Make sure that the fans hear that answer and they're comfortable with it. Make sure that the press hears that answer and they got an answer that they got so that they could write their story, right? And so I think that's kind of what's going on here, is that this is a very well-crafted answer in order to kind of keep Zeke's, focus, right? Not trying to disrupt the apple cart, not trying to talk badly about Zeke, but also, being honest about the fact that setting the expectation that, hey, Zeke isn't getting 30 carries this game.
No,
or 25 carries a game. Like he's not getting 25 carries in one game. Like that's just not the role anymore. So I think it's a difficult tap dance that the coaches have to do sometimes, but I think that was a very good job by McCarthy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we knew for a while that we're going to be running back by committee because all you had to do is look at their roster and be like, oh, yeah there's not a guy in this team that's going to have 20 touches in a game. So that it's just nice to hear that confirmed. I'm curious to see how they are planning on divvying up the roles.
Yes.
And how much one player gets, and are they going to be more open to a player like Deuce Vaughn? Are they going to be more open to Hunter Lipke playing on third downs? Like that's what we still have to figure out. But I think the days of Tony Pollard getting 80% of the snaps is just not going to happen. Like they clearly want to divvy up some of those rules.
Yeah, I think some people saw the Zeke signing and Pollard leaving, and then viewed that as, oh no, we're just swapping back to Zeke like we did before. That's just not the case. I just don't think that Zeke is not playing the same running back role that he did when he left this building. Yep. So, and I think the money dictates. The money shows you more than anything that's the case.
The other interesting thing that we got from minicamp is we got an official roster, which it's not a big deal. We got, I'm using this very unofficially, official heights and weights where a player like, I don't know, Jalen Moreno-Cropper grew 3 inches and gained, let's see, 20
pounds,
40 pounds, 174 at the combine.
Yeah, that's right. Because he was 174 at the combine.
174 at the combine, and now all of a sudden he's 215 pounds at minicamp. Obviously, don't read too much into that. However, I did want to say Bones Fossil and Mike McCarthy both talked about the idea of having multiple returners on the field at the same time and how that could change roster construction and how that could open up a spot for somebody like Jalen Moreno-Cropper, who the Cowboys really liked last year.
Yeah, and I think I'm still wondering exactly what shape this player is in currently, and I mean that like literally. Yeah. Is he 6'2" or is he less than 6 feet? That kind of makes a difference. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of speak to the overall point. I definitely think that it's going to change roster construction, and I think that it's not even just about the returners, right? Like I think. You look at someone like Deuce Vaughn, and I think he's going to get some more opportunities, right? Because you're going to have 2 of these guys on the field. So maybe you'll have 2 really small, quick guys back there, and whoever gets the ball moves it. Maybe you'll have 1 big guy, one quick guy. It'll be interesting to see the kind of combinations there. But I also think the other thing that's will be interesting there is the body types that will be filling out the rest of those rosters, right? The special teams rosters. I think that now that you're starting to see teams kind of adjust for these new kickoff return rules, you're going to start seeing more bigger bodies, I think, playing in these special teams, more of the 6'4", 6'3", 250 guys than you probably were seeing previously, right? Because you need some bigger bodies who can move, but it can also block, right? And can get through those blocks, right? On kickoff coverage. So I do think that there is a pretty major shift that's going to change in the kind of roster construction of the bottom half of the roster, just physically, right? As teams are adjusting to these new rules. And it is going to be interesting to see, especially when we get into late training camp, how that has an effect on players, 45 through 52, right? Like how those guys may go from, oh, maybe last year that was a 5th or 6th corner. Maybe this year it's a 4th tight end or a 7th defensive end or something like that. I mean, I'm just throwing these out, right? I just think that the shift in the body type is going to be interesting to see how roster construction works as we get closer to training, getting closer to the end of training camp.
Yeah, I am looking at the sheet the Cowboys gave out. Cropper 6'2", 215, which.
Look, I don't know if that's true or not. We're going to try to find out a little bit, but I did see some pictures yesterday of him standing next to Flournoy, and he looked bigger than Flournoy, and Flournoy is like, I think he's 6'1", 6 foot 200, something like that. So maybe he had a growth spurt. Maybe it's a perspective problem that that I just. But yeah, I'm interested to kind of get some information there, because that's the other thing too is. Mozzie was up to his I think rookie weight weigh in, but I have a feeling that that's probably just PR.
Well, because Mozzie also hasn't been working out because he's coming off a shoulder surgery, right?
Yeah,
so I've got no idea what shape he actually is in. I'm sure they don't either. They're just listing whatever he was drafted at, and that's his weight.
Probably that's what I assume.
I wouldn't read into too much of that. All right, we're gonna have lots of news and notes coming out of Cowboys practices over the next couple of weeks. And then the Cowboys are going to be off for the summer until what? Is it late July, early August when they start training camp? Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's coming. Football's coming. It's not going to be too much longer.
It's crazy how quickly it's like there's an ocean of quiet for about a month, there's still tons of news in that ocean of quiet, and then it just becomes like a fire hose, right? It's so much information that it's hard to digest it. So we're going to be here every day during the summer and beyond to make sure that we're deciphering it for y'all.
Yeah, just a couple notes about the rest of the week. We're going to answer your Twitter questions on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're going to react to the Cowboys schedule. We already know the teams they're playing. We just got to find out who the Cowboys are opening up the season with, when their primetime games are. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow the show on YouTube as well. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.